everybody. So, here is my answer to the question, why are educational and school psychologists more likely to follow an ecological model rather than a medical model? So, I wasn't sure what I'd be getting into with this question as I wasn't initially knowledgeable of the exact differences between the ecological and medical models. I can tell you that school psychologists should probably be following the ecological model, but again, I couldn't really give anyone any good reason why. So I started my journey by reading the provided transcription. The presented scenario of the school psychologist speaking with a teacher who is requesting an expedited evaluation to determine Bobby's eligibility is all too common, not to mention distressing, and really struck a chord with me. So maybe all along I've unintentionally followed the ecological model without even realizing it. The exciting part is that I will now be able to back up my beliefs with a greater understanding of what it really means to follow the ecological model, the benefits of doing so, and the negative impact that the medical model imposes on our students. So, I started my paper by discussing the negative implications that are likely to occur when one primarily utilizes a medical model in their practice. I focused on the many problems that are related to the medical model, discussed the importance of the environmental variable, and then touched on how these flaws are linked to the mental and educational health of our nation. I most enjoyed reading an article by Terry Gutkin in which she compares the two models. Gutkin comments on how the medical model stands as a barrier to progress. The way that I interpret this statement is this: the purpose of Gutkin comparing the medical to the ecological model in her paper isn't simply to provide the reader with the pros and cons of each and then deciding that, well, in the end, the ecological model is the way to go. But rather, this tells me that not only is the ecological model the best choice of the two, but that in utilizing the medical model, we are actually putting ourselves in a position that prohibits any growth, resulting in detrimental effects for our students. So it seems to be a really negligible way to approach things, to say the least. Gutkin goes on to describe the medical model approach to service delivery as failing both our society and our schools terribly. So, after reading about all the negative implications, I began to ask myself, why aren't school psychologists required to utilize an ecological model? Is this not something that can be enforced? Well, after reviewing several other sources of information, I think I found my answer to this question. But first, I'll briefly touch on why an ecological model is so effective in our schools. I understand that this model goes beyond the diagnosis or pathology of the individual and focuses on manipulating the environment to best meet the needs of the student. So it is an understanding that there are so many contributing factors to the student's behavior that we are in control of. And to me, that's great news. But back to the question, why couldn't school psychologists be required to take an ecological approach in their practice? Burns et al. Point out the fact that so much of what a school psychologist does is, in fact, in line with the medical model, such as with the extensive amount of testing that is done designated to diagnose disabilities, for example. So perhaps this is the answer that I was looking for. School psychologists will forever be required to administer IQ, an achievement test, and other various assessments in order to determine whether a student meets eligibility criteria, um, for special education services. It is clear that in that aspect, the medical model will always have a place in schools, and that it would be impossible to rid oneself entirely from it. I am now aware of what an ecological model consists of, as well as that of the medical model. And I understand that as a school psychologist, it is imperative that our practice and beliefs align closely with those of an ecological model. After all, it's the very root of what we do. As long as we continue to practice with the student's best interest in mind, I really think it's okay to say that the medical model will always have its place in school psychology too. Thanks.